If you're a small business owner who maintains your incomes and expenses in a spreadsheet and you maintain it as a sort of like a check register the way I do with positive and negative numbers, you may have run into the same problem I did, where you hand the spreadsheet to your CPA so he can prepare your tax return, and he doesn't like it because of all the negative numbers. See, for example, on my spreadsheet here, you can see rental income, I have positive numbers, and then insurance, when I made insurance payments, those are negative numbers in my spreadsheet. Accountants hate that because accountants use standard accounting practices. With standard accounting practices, you have different categories for your different numbers. So you have income categories and then you have expense categories. Insurance is an expense category. So the CPA wants to see that being a positive number instead of a negative number because it's a positive expense, so to speak. So at the end of the year, what happens? I have to go through hundreds of entries and flip the negative signs to positive. So there's many different ways you can do this. And I wanted to find a good way to automate this and make it super easy. So if you have to do this sort of thing over and over and over again, let me show you a quick way to automate it. So having to do these by hand is super annoying. Watch this. If I double click the cell just so I could edit it, the cursor's on the far right end. So I have to click again to get it on the left end. Well, now I need to delete to the right, so I have to hit the delete key, not the backspace key, and then hit enter to get it to take. Well, that was exciting. Now I got to do that hundreds of more times, row after row. Of course, you can do kind of the fill technique when you have a bunch of numbers that are the same. You can grab that little circle and drag them down to change a whole bunch of them in a row. You're basically copying that row over and over again. But that only works if the numbers are all the same in a row like that. It's not necessarily true. If you scroll down here and you see tons of negative numbers that are no two numbers are the same, it's very confusing. So we want a quick way to get this thing automatically switched over for us as fast as we can. So what I did was I wrote a macro in JavaScript to do this. Turns out Google Sheets gives you a way to automate things using JavaScript code. If you're familiar with programming in JavaScript, or you can use JavaScript that other people have on the internet. So my tiny little JavaScript snippet, I'll put it down in the comments so that you can make a copy of it. So if you copy and paste it, it's very, very short, and I'll walk you through it very quickly here. So the first thing we do on our spreadsheet is we go to Extensions menu and choose Apps Script. This is the little environment that we can write the JavaScript code. So you see here it opened a whole nother tab on my browser at the top here, which is good. It's kind of a little development environment, sort of. Well, I don't need the code that they have. I've already copied my function from another file. I'm just going to paste it in here. This is the one you'll find down in the comments. So let me walk you through this code real fast so that you can see there's nothing scary here at all. So even if you're not a programmer, this will kind of make sense the way I describe it. What this code does is it says let's get access to the active sheet. That's the current worksheet that you're working on with all your numbers on it. Then for that sheet it says let's get the active range, the selection range, because you can select a whole bunch of cells up and down or side to side. You can even select a whole rectangle of cells. Whatever that selection is, it has a number of rows and a number of columns, and this active range will be those cells, whatever they are. From those cells, we want to get just the values out of the cells, because cells can have formatting and other things related to them. We want just the values. So once we have that two-dimensional set of values, we need to walk through every element of it and see if we need to flip the negative sign. So this first for loop here, this is called a for loop, and it walks through all the rows of the selection. So all of the rows up and down. For every one of those rows, the next for loop loops through all the columns in that row. That way we're looking at each individual cell. The next statement checks if the data type is a number of that cell. If that cell's not a number, like if it's text or something, I don't want to change it, don't want to tweak it at all. But since it's a number, we now can do this here, which is to take the negative of the value at that row and column and put it right back in the same row and column. See, it just negates the value, basically, and puts it right back again. And that's basically what the code does. The very last line of code just stuffs all those values, that some of which we changed, back into the active range, the selected range that we have selected on our spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and save this macro. We have to click the Save button, Save Project to Drive. Okay, now we want to go back to our Worksheet tab. We've got to now connect that macro up to our spreadsheet. So we go to Extensions, Macros, and Manage Macros. So you can see here, so I should first say that the first time you do this, you'll need to import the macro. It'll say Import Macro. You'll click on that and you'll import the negate values macro that we created. I didn't need to do that here because it had already been imported. But then you go to Manage Macros and you can associate what key you want on the keyboard. So you could hit one key on the keyboard and have it come up and do the work at that moment. So it knows that we have the negate values macro, and we'll have to hold down Control, Alt, and Shift, and then we'll press the 1 key. I decided to make it be 1. So go ahead and type whatever. It could be 0 through 9, any one of the numeric keys. Go ahead and pick one of those keys and click the Update button. Okay, at this point, we've programmed that key to run that macro on whatever we've selected on our spreadsheet. So let's go ahead and select some other negative numbers. We can select a whole range of negative numbers and then press that key combination. Control, Shift, Alt, 1 is what I had. Okay. Now, the first time you do this, you need to authorize Google Sheets using that macro, because they're worried. They're like, we didn't write this code. Are you sure this code is safe? So I'm going to say OK, because I know I wrote this code. Now, Google is super paranoid about this, so it says, unless you know who this developer is, well, it's me, then you shouldn't use it. Well, it's me. I know what I'm doing. So I'm going to click Advanced, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Go to Untitled Project. This is just a way to go through this approval process for security purposes. So the very last screen, Google Presents, it's saying this app hasn't been verified by Google. Really, it's just a macro. And you saw every line of code in it, so there's nothing scary about it. So if you approve this macro to run in your spreadsheet, then you click the Continue button at the bottom. Okay, so now suddenly the negative signs went away on my selected range. Let's do that again. You can select a single field and type Control, Shift, Alt, and press the 1 key. And after 2 or 3 seconds, boom, the negative sign disappears. Now you can see these are still red. Well, that's because I copied and pasted all this data from an Excel spreadsheet where it was using red coloring. The red has no meaning at all when it comes to numbers. We could turn that off by going to the text color field and just saying reset. So you could reset all of your text colors all at once to the default color of black in this case, if you want to, or you could just leave it. It doesn't have any effect on adding up numbers or any other accounting principle you might have. So this is so powerful. Look, we can just select a new range of numbers and hit Control, Alt, Shift, 1. And after a couple seconds, boom, they all turned to a positive number. Now, if you did something in error, you can always hit Control Z to undo your last change. That'll even undo the last macro that occurred. See, so that's the same as this undo button up here. Well, there's also a redo button. Maybe I accidentally hit undo. I want to redo the undo to put it back positive again. There we go. Back to positive numbers again. So I can go through all my rows and rows and rows of data, but you know what's even faster than that If I just select all my rows of data, the whole thing, I'm going to select the beginning of all my rows of data, go down to the very end, where's the very end of my data, and hold the shift key down and click the last row. The shift key extends a selection from the beginning where I started all the way down to here. So I've selected hundreds, maybe thousands of entries. Now I'm going to sort them by value. That'll group all the negative numbers together, see? So you can go to Data, Menu, Sort Range, and they give you a couple sort options. Those aren't what you want. You want advanced range sorting options. So we get to decide which column to sort by. Well, column F is the one that had all my numbers in it. I'll show you that in just a moment. So I choose this column and I press sort. Boom! It resorted everything super fast. And if I scroll over, you'll see all the big numbers are at the bottom, all the small numbers are at the top. And there we go. All the negatives are right here at the very top. So I can now single click the first one. Scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll. Shift click the last one. Remember, Shift extends the selection. Now I've selected literally every negative number on this spreadsheet. All I got to do is do Control Shift Alt 1. Boom! They all got flipped to a positive number. While it's all selected, I could also turn the red coloring back to black again if I wanted to. But I'm basically done at this point. All these numbers have been fixed now. Once I've chosen the right categories, which I did first to make sure that the expense categories are the negative ones, now my accountant will understand everything I've done. So I give him the columns that he wants, the way he wants them, switch all those negative signs. Now it's ready to ship off to the CPA, and he can prepare my tax returns for last year. Hope that was helpful to somebody. Add comments on the bottom if you use this. Thank you. I'll talk to you later.